and behold, we got yet another box. Now previously I used these springs, which I think may be medium duty, not quite sure, had air helper springs inside, but they failed, and hence I was running along pretty much on the bump stops in Africa. These had 1 inch lift on them. Now I've gone for heavy duty springs here. These are made by Terra Firma. They got a 2 inch lift, and even though the air helper springs aren't complicated, the fact is it's a cause of failure, so I'm doing away with them. Now fitting longer springs is quite difficult. On the other hand, if you drop the axle, as I've done here, it's easy peasy. You put them into position, then you jack up the axle to take the load. Before we go any further, I just want to clarify the reason for the suspension lift. Now, as a general rule, I don't believe in making unnecessary modifications to these vehicles, and the ground clearance under a Defender is perfectly adequate for normal overlanding situations. However, for this vehicle, with its Daihatsu engine, the Daihatsu power steering pump sits beneath the engine on the right hand side and is far too close to the front diff, and hence I'm forced to make a suspension lift at the front and then obviously at the rear. However, it does cause attendant problems. You mess up the suspension geometry, you need to change the prop shaft, shock absorbers, you name it. But if I want power steering, I've got no alternative. I also had to pay attention to the rear anti-roll bar and shock absorbers. Like everything else, they needed to be cleaned up and repainted. But I also found that the lower studs on the shock absorbers had been fretting against the support brackets on the axle. And where the metal had worn away, I built it up with weld metal, and I welded thick washers into the lower brackets to act as centralisers. And finally I had to repair the damaged threads on the lower studs. Anyhow, they've now got a new lease of life. And so to the front of the vehicle, much the same as the rear actually. Taking for example the radius arms, well, they started off really cruddy, had layers of salty mud embedded into the dinitrol, so that had to come off. Starting off with the steam gun and scraper, get off as much as you can, and then attack it with everything else you've got. Power wire, brush, needle gun, you name it. Get down as close to bare metal as you can, and then degrease everything with white spirit. I had to replace the bushes. The old poly bushes had failed completely. I've gone back to conventional rubber bushes. Now I know many people manage to install these using a vise or other specialist tool. I'm fortunate enough to have a 6-ton press. I think I used most of that force to get the new bushes in. And finishing off with 3 coats of paint. The end product looks quite good, doesn't it? And a hell of an improvement over where it was. And I've now gone through to the front of the vehicle. I've taken off everything which can be removed. And there's a lot of work here. I'll refurbish what I can and replace things where I have to. Now I had fun and games yesterday removing ball joints, and particularly on the drag link, which I don't think's been removed in donkey's years. For the one on the left hand side of the vehicle, where there's quite good access, I was thankfully able to deploy my heavy shifter, and a few meaty blows and it fell apart. The one on the right, on the other hand, you don't have such good access, so I had to use a ball joint splitter using a 19mm spanner with an extension, and I think I strained it to within a millimetre of its life before the joint popped apart. I don't think this one on the anti-roll bar link is going to be the same problem, but you never know. So here goes. Didn't even put up a fight. But one point of interest, I'd taken out the old front shock absorbers, and these are bog standard, unbranded. I've had them many years, and I've done tens of thousands of kilometres off-road and over corrugations, and look, they're still as good as new. Now I do have a pair of nitrochargers, so I'll put them in, But I have to say, I don't think I can feel much difference between the two shock absorbers. I know conventional wisdom says that you should put in the very best shock absorbers that money can buy, but that isn't my experience. And yet again, I find I disagree with the conventional wisdom. The rear crossmember. All things considered, mine's in very good condition for a 33-year-old vehicle. On the other hand, I've had to work hard to keep it that way. But it's not in perfect condition, and there's two main problems. Firstly, the member's made up out of a couple of pressed steel channels which have an overlap area which is a natural corrosion trap. And secondly, you can't keep it clean inside. Even if you've got one of these inner mud shields, the mud still gets in, and you can drill drain holes in the bottom, you can try and pressure wash it, keep it clean, but the fact is that the mud still gathers there and it will corrode, particularly along the bottom flange. I did an experiment yesterday. I did an intensive pressure wash. I then made up a little scratching tool, and through the drain holes I scratched along the bottom flange, and lo and behold, a lot more mud came out. So I've decided I'm now going to do a local repair. Now for the rear crossmember, I actually did two different repairs. On one corner I cut out the bottom flange and replaced it, and this was quite a bit of work, and it's really quite awkward. The access not very good, and then you have to squat inside the rear wheel arch to get at it, and I decided it wasn't ideal. So for the rest of it, where the overlapping plates were corroding and were being forced apart, what I did was I firstly cleaned it out using a thin cutting disc. I then pinched the two plates together using a pair of vice grips, and I was able to put a seal weld in. Maybe not ideal, but it's certainly given life extension, and I'm sure it'll soldier on for another 10 years before I have to do something more permanent. Before I finish the video, I want to have a few reflections on the realities of doing a major restoration like this. Now, it's quite different to doing a big repair, say changing a clutch. There you got one work front and got one priority. Whereas with a job like this, the more you open up on the vehicle, the more work you find you've got to do, and it ends up being pretty chaotic. And there are some days that I begin to question my ability to see the job through. But the one thing I do know is if you begin to lose heart, the job will never get done on a sensible timescale. But I would urge others who are considering embarking on a big vehicle restoration, please think about it long and hard, because once you start, it becomes a major commitment.